think about, right? I'm priming you for the idea that we all have strengths and opportunities for growth, not just our kids. So in this wonderful Smart But Scattered text, if you are the lucky winner of this book, the authors have created a non-diagnostic assessment. So I created a very modified rendition of this in which on the questionnaire, it's for parents, right? And as you notice, you'll see right up here, lower elementary. So this slide focuses on skills within each of these executive functioning categories and what would be developmentally appropriate for this age level. As a parent, if you were to complete this for your child and say 1 through 3, you would rate them on a scale of 1 to 7. 1 being that you very much disagree, and 5 or 7 being you very much agree. And so, again, non-diagnostic. However, once you add everything up in each of these categories, it's going to tell you which ones seem to be areas of strength and which ones seem to be opportunities for growth. The same can be said for our 4th and 5th graders, right? But as you can see, same idea. The executive functioning skills, but the behaviors are going to be a little bit higher up, a little bit more, right? So going back, when we see 1 through 3, following rules, waiting turns, avoiding interruptions, which I still think can be really hard for 1st graders, 2nd graders, even 3rd graders. But then by the time we get to 4th and 5th, we're looking now at managing peer conflicts without physical fights, following rules without supervision, and calms down from emotional situations when prompted. Wow, that's a lot of skills already for a 4th and 5th grader. Sorry, give me just a second. I'll leave this up for just a second too. All right. Let's talk about parents as EF coaches. At this point, what I'm saying to you is that being the frontal surrogacy means that your child has the ability to build these skills, but that they're not there yet. They need us, right? So if our executive functioning skills are a little bit limited, then we have to be aware of that as well. And I'm going to come back to that when I talk about the parent assessment. But the assessment I just went through is a good way to say, based on my perception, maybe based on their other parents' perception or their grandmothers, their grandparents, this is what they do well and this is what they need to work on, right? So then we can make a plan for what strategies are we going to use to help them. But it's the difference between being intentional and specific with what you're doing with them and being like, okay, we're going to use this timer and when it's up, I want you to start your homework and then walking away, right? So again, coming back to biology, where does biology come in with executive functioning skills? We said kids aren't born able to tackle to-do lists. So at birth, executive functioning skills are like brand new smartphones, as we said. That was the analogy I gave you. And when you think about that, it's both exciting to get a new phone and overwhelming because you're like, is everything going to transfer? No, I have to do this, right? And so it can be a little bit overwhelming. The same can be said when you are learning how to do something the first time that you don't know how to do and then continuing to try to repeat it. So we also know that it takes about 25 years for the frontal lobes, so this part of our brain which is responsible for our executive functioning skills, to fully develop. 25 years. That means past high school, past college, into the work world, independent and living on our own. This is all still developing. So that means kids can't rely solely on their own brains to regulate behavior yet. So what's the solution? Until your child's frontal lobe catches up, they borrow ours. So think of yourself as a co-pilot on their executive skills journey. Parents and teachers, right, because we spend a good portion of the time of the day with them too, play a crucial role in helping kids learn these skills during childhood, which is like that golden window for building those future independent muscles, right? So take modeling, for example. When you make a grocery list before shopping or stick to a bedtime routine, you're not just being responsible, you're giving your child a front row seat to planning and organization and what it looks like. And maybe you're going to avoid I guess when I go to the grocery store, I love going alone, not just because it's quiet, but because then my grocery bill is probably $100 cheaper than what it would otherwise be with my kids that get really excited about all of the snacks. So now, if your child's executive functioning skills challenges, so going back to that sheet that I just showed you, and it's the area that maybe has the most that you agree with, that is something that's difficult or disagree with. If that bothers you, it's probably because that's one of your strengths. So, for example, I'll give you one for me. I feel like I can be pretty good at managing my emotions. But one thing that I get frustrated about is when I need to be somewhere and there's something else that is holding me up, like my children, and we are late, right? So my oldest son, we're working on this, is trying to get out the door, right? But now he says he's ready to go, but he's lost one of his boots. He doesn't have his water bottle. As you can see, this might be an area of his strength for me because I've packed my stuff the night before and he's still looking for his things. So I want you to I'm gonna pause for a second. Think about a thing that your kiddo does that's frustrating, a little bit annoying. And why is that annoying for you? Is it a skill deficit for them? Is it a skill strength for you? So then when your skill matches their skill strength, we call this when it is a mismatch, we call this a goodness of fit issue. So when your strengths and your child's challenges don't necessarily match up. The opposite being that if your strengths and their strengths match up, it is a good fit, right? But that's not in a perfect world, but not all of us have the same strengths as our kiddos. And again, they're using our frontal lobe. So if our strengths are their strengths, that might also be because of what they're tapped into for us. So let's say neither of you excel at sustaining attention and you decide to tackle cleaning the garage together. God, that's a terrible task. I don't know why I wrote that as an example. I almost think bedroom. What starts as a quick job can spiral into chaos, right? So kiddo is like, oh my gosh, look at these old boxes of toys, and I forgot about this, and maybe all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know we had this, and before it's dinner time, and now both of you are frustrated with that nothing got done, and there's finger pointing, and we're arguing, and the task didn't get finished. So this is why understanding both your child's executive skills and your own is so important. When you know where you both shine and where you both struggle, you can approach challenges with humor and with teamwork instead of blame and frustration. So for instance, if you're great at planning and your child isn't, you can help them by laying out a step-by-step roadmap for a task. If you both struggle with attention, you can break big tasks into bite-sized pieces and celebrate small wins along the way. Sometimes you might even discover unexpected goodness of fit. So if you're naturally organized and your child's strength is creativity, you might decide to get a bunch of bins or folders and colored markers, and by understanding your own executive skills and their strengths and creativity, you're allowing them an opportunity to build this skill in a way that they enjoy and appreciate. But understanding our own skill patterns will help our child grow, and it'll also create harmony in our home. All right, so pausing here again. As I mentioned, there's a parent self-assessment. Again, non-diagnostic, non-judgmental. This is not a shame game, right? This is an opportunity for us to look deeper into ourselves and see where have we built our skills, use it or lose it. Where have we spent a lot of our time building up our skills, and where have we not? Because in reality, nobody's going to be strong in all of these skills all the time. It's not possible. But I'm gonna pause for a second to let you see, and I know some of my friends in the back may not be able to see as well, but these are each categories that, again, coming back to the Smart But Scattered text, outlined as far as adult skills and what would be expected for us. Take a second and look at it. And I'm going to encourage you to look for your strengths. What are you good at? I'm going to have you do the same activity. Oh, I don't have numbers here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. As you can see, we're getting a little bit more with adults. Can you show me which number you identified as your strength with your fingers? Hold up which number you feel is your strength. Response inhibition, working memory, emotional control, flexibility, sustained attention, task initiation, planning and prioritizing, organization, time management, goal-directed persistent, and metacognition. Which one's your strength? Awesome. Now I'm going to ask you, that same strength you identified, is it a strength for your kid, or is it an opportunity for growth? And you don't have to answer, it's rhetorical. But this is something to keep in mind. What am I good at? What are they good at? What's hard for me? What's hard for them? And they are using us to build these skills. So if something is hard for us and we are lagging skills on that, they're also going to lag skills around that. So now at this point, we're going to jump in a little bit more on some of the specific areas. I won't spend too much time here, but I think it is important to talk about, because I went through these already, but talk a little bit about them individually. So I'm going to start here with emotional and cognitive awareness, right? So these are the skills that are like our brain's backstage crew. They keep the show running, but are kind of more subtle, except then when things fall apart, that can be a bit of a problem, right? So our self-control with our, sorry guys, I was meaning to push the other button. See, here we go. I don't know why this is doing this, sorry. So our impulse control, managing our impulses and staying focused despite distractions. So this is what helps our child, as I said, hold the urge of shouting out, "This is boring," or that first thought that comes to mind, right? Again, emotional regulation, keeping it together when something doesn't go our way. So this is something that you're strong at. At this point, as adults, maybe we've worked on that filter to be able to know when to say things, like that whole, do I think it or do I say it phenomenon. Kids are still working on that, right? But then also, if you have difficulty with that, it would make sense that it's mirroring for them. If you are naturally patient and your child struggles with emotional regulation, how does your calm demeanor help them practice staying cool? On the other hand, if you struggle with self-control, it might look like 2 ticking time bombs that are about to go off before bedtime. So the goal is to figure out how your strength can support their growth and maybe avoid 2 meltdowns. Oops, sorry. So quick question. Oh, and I gave it away. Quick question. Your child becomes frustrated and has a meltdown during homework. What's the best way to help them focus? Is it A, ignore the meltdown and let them calm down on their own? B, raise your voice and demand they complete their homework? C, stay calm, acknowledge their feelings, and suggest a short break? Or D, finish their homework for them to avoid further stress? A is 1, B is 2, C is 3, D is 4. Which answer is it? I know I gave it away a little bit, but all right. The correct answer is C. We want to stay calm, acknowledge their feelings, and suggest taking a short break. This models emotional regulation and teaches them strategies to refocus. Now, when we think about kids, they do not have the ability to regulate themselves by themselves. It is not developmentally appropriate. So if I'm having a hard time holding it together, because maybe I'm really bad at math, and they don't understand math, and now it has more to do with my inability to understand what they're doing, but now they're having a hard time and I'm having a hard time, this math homework is not going to get done by either of us, even if I wanted to do it, right? So when we are able to take the calm, we're modeling that for them, that it's okay to have big feelings, but that we don't need to have big reactions to that. We can calm down and we can figure out what to do next. Planning and organizational skills. I want to try not to give away the answer this time. All right, so these are unsung heroes of getting anything done. These are the skills that help your child turn a science project due tomorrow into an actual science project rather than that, hey mom, I need a cardboard poster board for tomorrow for the project that's due that was assigned 2 weeks ago. Not that anybody has run into that or anything like that. So again, just reviewing planning and, am I on? Yep. So just running back to planning and organization. Sorry guys. This thing is acting a little bit funny. There we go. So planning and prioritization, ability to figure out what needs to be done, deciding that writing the essay comes before designing the really fancy cover, task initiation, starting what needs to be done as opposed to what we want to get done, and organization, knowing where our math homework is and putting it in the same place so we know where to find it. But let's be real, if these skills are also ones that your child struggles with, you're probably already familiar with this chaos. It's probably what's going on at home, right? So if you also struggle with planning and organization, it can sometimes feel like you're both looking for things and that will create even more chaos. But the good news is that we can use routines and checklists as tools that can help both of us. So for example, creating a morning checklist together can turn your child's morning routine from, did you brush your teeth? Ooh, you really need to brush your teeth tonight because you forgot to brush your teeth again, into a little something smoother. Hey, let's go brush your teeth. Now let's go pack your bag. And now all of this is done and we can walk out of the house and both of us can feel good about the choices that we've made to take care of our body. So when we are teaching them how to prioritize and manage things at school, that can also carry over at home. But again, coming back to that idea of how that structure and that routine and consistency also has to show up. And I know that the home environment is different, but those are some pieces that can carry over from school to home. All right, and just right here too, I want you to think about how can you adjust your expectations to support flexibility and persistence. Our expectations are probably going to be our number one thing that's going to get in the way for us as far as what we want to happen versus what is happening. So we ourselves too have to utilize our own cognitive flexibility skills. And if that's a lagging skill, something to work on, in order to work with our kids around what should happen over what did happen. All right, quick checkpoint question. Your child comes home and says they have math homework, spelling, words, and a poster for history class due tomorrow. What do you do? A, panic and immediately start working on the history poster together, forget the other tasks. B, tell your child just do it all, figure it out, and go back to your day. C, help them make a quick list, decide which tasks need to be done first, and set a timer for each one to keep things moving. D, ignore the whole situation and hope for a snow day. A is one. Sorry, Belle, what'd you say?
No more snow days. It's all remote work now.
True. Well, didn't we have a snow day one day? I feel like last year I think it was a snow day instead of a remote day. Maybe I'm wrong. A is 1, B is 2, C is 3, D is 4. What is the correct answer? So tempting. I'm just gonna say. The first snow we got this season, my middle son was like, we might not even have school tomorrow, it's snowing. Like, I need you to still pack your bag anyway. So yes, we wanna help them make a quick list, decide which tasks need to be done first, and set a timer for each one of those things moving. That is 3 different executive functioning skills there, right? Create a list. Decide which ones are going to be done first, prioritizing, and then setting a timer for time management. All right, so time and goal management, as we just talked about, right? So these skills require a mix of flexibility and persistence, which can be a tough combo for kids. If your kids struggle here, think about how you might tweak expectations to build systems to help them. For example, as we just talked about, a visual timer can help with time management and breaking big tasks into bite-sized pieces, making long-term goals feel less daunting, which also helps us to support them instead of being like, have you done that yet? Is that done? I thought that was done, and us being overwhelmed. So big pieces here. Again, expectations, right? Breaking things down into smaller steps and incentivize, which we're going to come back to. And our checking question here, your child has a big test. Oh, my bad. Your child has a big test coming up, but instead of studying, they're perfecting their Fortnite skills or rearranging their sock drawer. How do you help them stick to the goal? Bribe them with candy, tempting, but let's think long term. Nag them every 5 minutes until they crack under pressure. C, break the goal into smaller tasks like reviewing one topic each night and set up a reward system. D, give up entirely and say, fine, fail the test, your choice. What's the correct answer here? We're going to say C, right? Break things into smaller tasks like reviewing a topic each night and then setting up a reward system for each. We're going to talk about incentives in just a minute. How are we doing? Need to shake it up a little bit? I know I've been talking at you a lot. We have some fun stuff coming up. All right, so let's talk a little bit about our development, reviewing this again. So promoting executive functioning developed intentionally. So executive functioning skills, as I talked about earlier, so they start showing up 6 months, 8 months, 12 months, but they are not yet developed, right? So beginning to these skills start to develop early doesn't mean that they're going to continue to magically grow on their own. In fact, again, the use it or lose it, that if we're not helping them build that, it will not grow. As parents, you're basically the personal trainers for your child's brain, and interactions and experiences you provide make all the difference. So the good news is you're probably already doing a lot to help your child with their executive functioning skills. You're helping them pack their bag in the morning. If you're helping them organize, you're helping them organize and working memory. And when you say, hey, let's clean up your room, and they reply, do I have to? Then you're working on that persistence. Encouraging mastering control. So in this area, we want to talk about how raising independent kids can feel a little bit like, how it can be a little bit difficult. Kids naturally want to take charge of their own world, and that drive shows up really early, right? So I think I mentioned I have a 2-year-old, so we're definitely in that phase of, no, I'll do it myself. And while I love that independence as a parent, it can be really hard and frustrating if I have my own agenda, if I have my own expectations, right? But at the same time, I want to promote that independence. I want to promote that skill building. So the reality is that kids grow more independent. They're going to set their own agendas, and those agendas are definitely going to clash with ours. So how can we support independence while teaching them the skills and values they need to thrive? So here's a few strategies that we're going to talk about up here. So we're going to talk about creating and posting schedules. Do any of you guys raise your hand if you have a calendar at home or a schedule that's posted? Oh, I love it, you guys, that's awesome. What about technology schedules? Does anybody's kids utilize apps at all with their schedules? Not yet, because we're still elementary for sure. So we know that creating and posting schedules gives us a reminder of what to expect and when. Gradually increasing tasks, right? So new tasks can be really overwhelming. So start small and work up. So you want them to start helping to pack their lunch. Set by asking them, do you want an apple or a banana today? And then over time, they can take more responsibility. You just don't want to expect them to be able to pack a whole lunch by themselves if they're 5 years old. So you have to think about where are they at developmentally, what skills should they be able to be at, and how can I help them work towards that if they're not there yet. Presenting alternatives, so instead of jumping to affirm no, right, which sometimes no comes from a place of I'll just do it, it's easier, it's faster, but if no doesn't need to be no, it's presenting options so that that way they feel like they're in control, right? I want to play outside, sure, but first let's clean up your toys, then you can go outside. Right? So this is a way that they can get what they want, but they learn that want to sometimes follows with have to. And that doesn't mean that you're never going to say no. There are definitely moments that we do need to say no, and especially if they come in with safety situations, right? But offering alternatives when appropriate can keep protests to a minimum and teach compromise. Choices to foster decision making. So giving kids choices makes them feel like they do have control and gives a break from the constant power struggle, right? So limit it to 2 or 3 options. Would you rather do your homework at the table or on the couch? Do you want broccoli or carrots? So you want to make sure that both choices are ones that you can live with, right? So don't give them a choice that you wouldn't be able to follow through with. Negotiation, right? So negotiation doesn't have to necessarily, we can use negotiation without it causing meltdowns, right? It can be a really valuable life skill. So by giving our kids opportunities to make choices, negotiate, and take ownership of their progress, we're helping them develop their confidence and independence. So it's not always easy, especially when their agenda involves, can we make this slime or this oobleck that's going to make all of this mess on the table? Being able to negotiate might look like, we can do that, but what are some ways that we can keep it only in this area, right? What can we use to put down on the table so that way it doesn't make it all messy? Now we are promoting that thinking through, planning, task initiation, as well as responsibility there in taking care and cleaning up our mess, right? I might skip, guys, because I'm looking at time and it's 8 o'clock and I want to make sure I get to this part. We already talked about developmental tasks. So moving from external to internal support. So we know that things start from the external, the outside, the us, right, to moving to internal supports. So the things that we do repetitively are what help them build, right? So for our kids, when we're teaching them safety at crossing the street, right, we say, hold my hand, look both ways before you cross, and we do this over and over again until that has been primed and repeated, and now they're at a point that they don't have to hold my hand because they stopped and they looked both ways and they know to cross the street. Right? Providing cues to remind them to brush their teeth before bed. I know that that can sometimes be monotonous. However, setting up a routine and adding that in there, did you brush your teeth? Hey, let's go brush your teeth. And continuing to remind until we've established, before I go to bed, I brush my teeth, right? We want to structure the environment, the tasks, and the interactions to compensate for developing skills and then gradually reduce involvement. We don't want to just completely remove it altogether. So I'm going to skip past this part. Sorry. Actually, I'm going to pause for just a second. So some tasks are going to take more from us take more from our kids than others. And being their parents, you're going to know what it looks like when they're starting to have a hard time, right? So we want to look at the tasks and think about which ones are going to require more effort and which ones are going to allow our kids to be able to try it without feeling defeated, right? Tasks that they're not good at are challenges that we're going to require new skill development so that we don't have things that we don't have skills around yet, and then our tasks that we don't like, right? So it's skill deficit, I don't know how to do it, performance deficit, I don't want to do it. As adults, we have this in our work, and I'm sure in our workplace, in our life too, so we put the tasks off that we don't really want to do. How can we support our kids with that? Instead of creating a battleground with our kids, right? It's kind of trying to shift our approach and reduce friction so we can break things up into smaller, manageable steps. Ask them what's one thing that they can do in order to work towards this, right? So adding one step each time. So maybe at first it's, can you go grab your toothbrush and I'll be right there, right? As we're starting to develop a brushing teeth routine at night. And then we come down and we help make sure they brush their teeth. Now I want you to put the toothpaste on the toothbrush the next night. And we're slowly building it so that way they feel successful in what they're doing. And then, of course, encouraging effort with positive feedback. So we want to reinforce their efforts, not just the outcome, right? So they're not going to be successful all the time, but when they do, it's recognizing you did a really great job trying that, and we're going to keep going. We're going to keep building this up. This is the part I wanted to get to. Incentives and rewards. Does anybody have a rewards chart, sticker chart at all at home? No rewards, no incentives, a little bit, maybe. So we know that when it comes to incentives, right, these are rewards and they can be helpful for us, but they can also be hindersome too, right? We're talking about intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. So this is when kids do something just for fun, intrinsic motivation, or to challenge. They enjoy it, right? Same thing with us as adults. What are we doing because we like it and we enjoy it, as opposed to getting something tangible out of it, right? Think of pure joy of riding a bike, or for me, sitting down and reading a book in quiet. And so kids have the same thing as far as what they enjoy doing. But it's hard to build up that intrinsic motivation, right? Kids are naturally wired to enjoy mastering skills and solving problems. So most kids want to learn how to climb stairs, ride bikes, or bake cookies. And these activities make them feel competent, connected, and capable. 3 things that intrinsic motivation thrives on. But the catch is that when our child is deep into an activity that they love, asking them to shift gears is something a little less exciting, right? And it can feel like pulling teeth. So that's where incentives come in, and they can help sweeten the deal and make this a little bit less painful. So some of the things that we can do are first then approaches, right? First, finish your math homework, then you get a YouTube video. Tailor the reward, so we want to pick something meaningful for our kid. One size doesn't fit all, so maybe this looks like some extra screen time, as opposed to maybe let's play a board game together when you finish this. And then keeping it manageable. So incentives should feel like a treat and not a negotiation. So if you are going back and forth on, well, how about this or how about that, it's probably gone deeper and not going to really get you what you need in that interaction. So intrinsic motivation is the ultimate goal, but extrinsic motivators can pave the way. Over time, as kids feel successful and see the value in what they're doing, those extrinsic rewards can fade into the background. So it can be hard to say, oh, well, given them this, when are they going to learn how to do this skill? You are building that, but again, thinking about that fading, right? Can they go a little bit longer before they get that reward the next time, and gradually starting to remove that support, which is what we're looking into, reinforcing, right? So providing just enough support. Has anyone taught their child how to ride a bike yet? Now, what's that experience been like? It's been pretty good. That is awesome. It's scary though too, right? Because you're essentially putting them on the bike and you're like, I got you, but when do I let go? Right? And even when I let go, then there's a possibility that you're going to fall. And parenting in this regard can also feel like that as well. So goodness of fit in regards to how much support is going to be a trial and error. But we do want to make sure that we are not overcompensating and doing too much for them, but also at the same time, too little support can also have them struggle to repeatedly without learning what to do, right? So what do we want to do? We want to adjust over time. Routines and behaviors take weeks or months to establish. For children, progress may be slower due to developmental demands. So again, pulling from that idea of what's developmentally appropriate, where your child is at, your skill strengths, your skill challenges. But what can we do? We can define the problem clearly. So we want to write down what is the specific behavior that we're having a hard time with, right? Forgets to hand in homework. It's pretty specific. And then we want to think about that from a standpoint of, I'm not asking you to write a whole paper on it, but how often is this happening? And then we can maybe step in with some steps for what we can do to support. We want to be patient and consistent because lasting change takes time, but visible progress will emerge. This is this last part that's really important. I pulled this piece. I really like this. Has anyone heard of Ross Greene, who wrote The Explosive Child? So I pulled this information from him because he talks a lot about this theory of how children do well when they can, right? So I think we have to talk about our kids and changing our perspective around their abilities. Give me 1 second though. I'm a little lost in my presentation. And a little nervous if I'm being honest. So we have definitely heard the myths, I'm sure, right, of kids who have challenging behaviors. And challenging just in that moment means they're having a hard time, right? Oh, well, maybe they're being manipulative, they're attention seeking, they're lazy, they're defiant, they're spoiled. And then, of course, there's also that question of, well, what are the parents doing? Are they involved in this, or what's going on that they can't change this behavior for this child, right? But we know that kids with challenging behavior don't behave this way all the time, only when they're struggling to meet an expectation. And most parents of kids with concerning behaviors have other children who are well behaved. So it's not as if a parent decided to pour into one child and not another. So what's really going on is that concerning behaviors show up when expectations are outpaced skills. So if a child is struggling skill deficit wise, that's where we're going to see a behavior, because behavior is communication. Kids do not have the ability to say, I'm struggling with being able to know where to start with this. They're going to get upset, put their head down, and not work on the activity, right? We want to compare something that we've already accepted, so reading difficulties, right? Years ago, kids who struggled to read were dismissed as lazy or stupid. And we know that's absolutely absurd because they're lacking the skills to read fluently. The same principle applies here. Kids don't want to fail or cause problems, and if they could handle their frustrations and adapt to challenge, they would. The outdated idea is that kids act out because they want their way or lack motivation doesn't hold water. So getting your own way adaptively requires skills, right? You do have to put a lot of planning into being able to try and get your own way. Kids who are struggling don't lack motivation, they lack skills. So what we want to make sure we're doing is identifying where are those lagging skills, look at the situation in which they're happening, and then try to plan ahead. So by embracing the idea that kids do well, if they can, we focus on identifying lagging skills and unmet expectations instead of assigning blame. It's a mindset shift that allows us to guide our children more effectively and compassionately. So we're going to work together, or you're going to want to work together with your child to think about your child and when they are having a hard time with some of their behaviors and what skills might be lacking in that. Again, with the QR codes, if you would like, this one doesn't show your score on the board, but this is a Google form quiz. If you would like to complete this quiz, you can scan the QR code. If you feel like you did good, then I think I did a pretty good job with my presentation. This is going to be my last slide of the night. So I covered a lot today, from understanding our executive functioning skills for supporting our kids' development. So I'm going to open the floor to questions if anyone has any. If not, I do want to thank everyone for being here. And as you leave tonight, I hope you find one piece of information or strategy that's going to better enhance your perspective and your relationship with your child, because you are your child's best resource in building these essential skills. And I chose this last slide. I told Mr. Zales, one of my favorite parts of being a part of the Prairie community is that every morning during announcements, the last thing that's said by Mr. Zales and the students for their birthday that day is never stop learning, right? And I think that's a really great mentality, that regardless of how old you are, continuing to learn means that you're continuing to grow. So you're never too old to stop learning. And you've got this last QR code is a link to my resource page. So you will find links to the books that I utilized for this information. You will find additional articles as well as videos. And if you would like, I have a feedback form in there. I hope to do more of these in the future. So if there's things that you feel like could have been done better, as I'm sitting here, I'm even thinking of a few as well, I would appreciate that feedback. Thank you guys. I appreciate it.